If you'd told me 6 years ago that I'd one day walk back into Marcus Hale's office, clipboard in hand, company badge swinging, wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly rent used to be, I would have laughed you out of the room. Because 6 years ago, Marcus was my boss. 6 years ago, I was engaged to Claire. And 6 years ago, they both decided I was disposable. 1. The setup. At 28, I thought I'd figured life out. I'd landed a mid-level analyst job at a marketing analytics firm in Chicago, Helios Strategies, and I actually liked it. It wasn't glamorous, but it was solid, full of smart people, and the kind of place where hard work meant something. Claire worked there too, in account management. We met at one of those awkward cross-department happy hours where you stand around with plastic cups pretending to network. She was sharp, funny, and had this dry humor that could cut through the office nonsense like a scalpel. We clicked fast. Coffee breaks turned into lunches, lunches into after-hours chats, and before I knew it, we were moving in together in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled perpetually like takeout and optimism. Our boss, Marcus Hale, was the golden boy of Helios. Charismatic, ruthless in that polished corporate way, and very aware of how good he looked in a tailored suit. He had that kind of CEO-in-training swagger that made upper management love him and most subordinates fear him. I admired him once. I thought he was the kind of leader I could learn from. Looking back, that was mistake number 1. 2. The cracks. It started small. A joke that went too far. A hand that lingered on her shoulder during a meeting. The kind of things you tell yourself not to overthink because Marcus is just like that. Then came the late-night texts. Work emergencies, she said. The unplanned client dinners. The time she'd come home smelling faintly of his cologne. I wasn't naive, but I was in love, and people in love are masters of rationalization. The first real crack came one night when she left her phone on the kitchen counter. It buzzed twice before I could stop myself. 2 messages. Both from Marcus. You looked incredible tonight. Can't stop thinking about you. That was the kind of text that doesn't leave room for misinterpretation. I confronted her. She denied it. Cried. Said I was being paranoid. That Marcus was just intense, and that I was reading into it. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. So I did. That was mistake number 2. 3. The betrayal. The truth didn't stay buried long. 2 weeks later, HR called me in for a performance review. Marcus was there. So was a woman from HR I barely knew. They told me my numbers were slipping, that clients had raised concerns, that it might be best to part ways before things got worse. It was rehearsed. Cold. Surgical. When I asked for specifics, Marcus gave me that sympathetic smile he'd perfected. You're a good guy, Ethan. But this just isn't working out. That's corporate speak for I'm firing you. And there's nothing you can do about it. I packed my desk in silence while Claire avoided eye contact. Later that night, I came home to find her things gone. The apartment looked bigger without her, and emptier in all the worst ways. A week later, someone sent me a photo. Marcus and Claire, together, at a company retreat in Tahoe. She wasn't even hiding it. I quit social media that day, deleted her number, but the damage was done. My career was in shambles, blacklisted from an industry that thrived on reputation and whispers. 4. The rebuilding. Grief has stages, but unemployment adds a few more. There's disbelief, then anger, then the dull ache of humiliation that gnaws at you when you realize how disposable you are in someone else's story. For a while, I bartended. Took on freelance data gigs. Anything to pay rent. I kept my head down, told people I'd left Helios voluntarily. Then one night, an old client reached out. He'd heard what happened. You were the only one who knew how to clean up Marcus's messes, he said. I could use someone like you. That's how I stumbled into consulting, compliance, analytics, process auditing. I got good at finding patterns, at seeing what people tried to hide in spreadsheets and reports. Turns out, betrayal teaches you to read between lines better than any MBA program ever could. By 35, I was self-employed, respected, and, for the first time, genuinely at peace. Claire and Marcus? I didn't think about them. Not until one Tuesday morning when an email landed in my inbox. 5. The email. From Jessica Liu, HR Director. Subject: Compliance Audit Request, Arcadia Dynamics. Arcadia Dynamics was a mid-sized tech consultancy expanding fast. I'd heard of them. Decent reputation, aggressive growth. Jessica's email was brief. We're looking for an independent auditor to review internal financial and compliance systems. You come highly recommended by our mutual contact, Thomas Grant. It was routine, until I opened the attached org chart. Marcus Hale, COO. Claire Hale, Director of Client Strategy. The universe, apparently, had a sense of humor. I stared at the screen for a long time, coffee going cold beside me. Part of me wanted to decline, send a polite, "I'm unavailable," pretend it didn't matter. But another part, the quieter, steadier part, just smiled. "Accept," I typed back. "I look forward to working with you." 6. The return. Arcadia's offices were in the West Loop, all glass walls and Scandinavian furniture, a shrine to modern corporate ambition. When I arrived for the kickoff meeting, Marcus was already there, same perfect hair, same overconfident grin. He froze when he saw me. "Ethan," he said, voice tight. "Well, this is unexpected." "Small world," I said, shaking his hand. "Firm. Professional. No malice." Claire appeared moments later, clipboard in hand, face draining of color when she saw me. Her wedding ring glinted under the fluorescent light. "Mr. Hale," I said with a polite nod. "Mrs. Hale." She swallowed. "You're auditing us?" "Independent compliance review," I said, smiling. Nothing personal. And it wasn't. Not really. Because by then, I wasn't the same man they destroyed. I wasn't angry anymore. I was something far more dangerous. Thorough. Part 2, the audit. If you've never run an independent audit, let me tell you, it's equal parts detective work and diplomacy. You're not there to accuse anyone. You're there to ask polite questions that make people sweat. Arcadia Dynamics wanted a comprehensive compliance review. Their investors were circling a Series D funding round, and apparently, someone on the board had suggested an external consultant just to be safe. That someone was about to become my new favorite person. 1. The first day. My team was small, just me and 2 analysts I trusted implicitly. I handled client relations, they handled data mining. I briefed them on Arcadia without mentioning my personal history. "We treat this like any other engagement," I said. "No assumptions, no bias. We follow the numbers." Still, when I walked into that sleek glass building, memories trailed behind me like ghosts. I remembered the way Marcus used to bark orders across open floors. The way Claire laughed too loud at his jokes. The way my career had crumbled under both their shadows. Now, I was the one holding the flashlight. Marcus greeted me with the same artificial warmth as before. "Ethan, I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting to see your name on the roster." "Life's full of surprises," I said. "Where should we start?" He gestured toward the conference room. "You'll have full access. I trust you'll be fair." I smiled. "Always." 2. Paper trails and polished lies. The first red flag came within a week. My analyst, Priya, flagged inconsistencies between expense reports and vendor payments. Small discrepancies at first, a few thousand here, a mislabeled invoice there. Nothing egregious. But patterns have a way of whispering when you know how to listen. Arcadia's vendor pool included several shell companies, each tied, by faint but traceable threads, to a holding firm registered under Marcus's brother's name. It was subtle, clever even. Funds were being rerouted through inflated contracts for strategic marketing support. On paper, perfectly legitimate. In practice, it was embezzlement dressed in Armani. I didn't jump to conclusions. Instead, I logged every finding meticulously. Dates, accounts, signatures, each one a puzzle piece waiting for its neighbors. 3. The reunion. I ran into Claire by the coffee machine on the 3rd day. She looked older. Not aged, just tired in a way I recognized. The kind of exhaustion that comes from years of smiling through regret. "You look good," she said awkwardly. "So do you," I lied. Silence stretched between us like barbed wire. "I didn't know you were consulting now," she said finally. "It's been a few years," I said. "Different clients, different industries. Life moves on." Her eyes flickered. "Ethan, about." "Don't," I said gently. "We both made our choices." I walked away before she could reply. Because forgiveness and forgetting aren't the same thing, and I wasn't here for either. 4. The deep dive. By week 2, the threads had multiplied. Priya and our data tech, Lewis, unearthed evidence of off-the-books bonuses routed through an overseas account. The pattern pointed upward, directly to Marcus. He'd been skimming performance incentives meant for senior staff and rerouting them to himself. Worse, Claire's department showed unusual client retention bonuses, approved by Marcus, paid to her team, and then quietly refunded to internal accounts. They weren't stealing millions. They were stealing just enough to stay invisible. Classic Marcus. Always ambitious enough to cheat, but never bold enough to get caught, until now. 5. The calm before the storm. Friday afternoon, Marcus invited me to lunch. We went to an upscale bistro 2 blocks from the office. He ordered wine. I ordered water. I have to say, he said, leaning back, you've done well for yourself. Independent consulting, nice suit, all that. Guess getting fired wasn't the end of the world, huh? I smiled thinly. Guess not. He smirked. You know, I always thought you were too nice for this industry. Not cutthroat enough. I learned, I said. Eventually. He laughed. Well, I hope your report treats us kindly. We're on the verge of a big funding round, and the board's a little jumpy. I looked him straight in the eye. Then I'm sure you have nothing to worry about. He didn't see the storm behind the smile. 6. The documentation. Audits live and die by documentation. You can't accuse, you can only demonstrate. Every file went into an encrypted folder. Invoices, timestamps, access logs, payroll records. My notes stayed clinical. No emotion, no commentary, just facts. When Priya asked if we should notify Arcadia's legal team early, I shook my head. Not yet. Let the data speak first. Always finish the puzzle before you show the picture. It took 3 more weeks to finish that picture. And when it came into focus, it was ugly. Marcus had siphoned over $400,000 through shell firms and consulting bonuses. Claire's department had falsified performance data to secure inflated client contracts. Both had signed off on financial statements submitted to investors, statements that now looked fraudulent. It wasn't just unethical. It was criminal. 7. The confrontation. When the final draft of the audit report was ready, I scheduled the exit meeting. Marcus walked in confident. Claire followed, eyes downcast. The HR director, Jessica, and the CFO, Daniel, joined via video call. I started the presentation like any other audit summary. Calm, neutral, procedural. Overall, Arcadia Dynamics demonstrates strong operational efficiency, I said. However, several irregularities require attention. Slide after slide, I unfolded the truth. Transaction histories, vendor links, the shell corporations, the unauthorized transfers. Each slide felt like a scalpel incision, clean, precise, deliberate. Marcus's smile faltered by the 3rd chart. Claire's hands trembled by the 5th. These findings, I concluded, suggest violations of both company policy and fiduciary responsibility. The documentation has been verified independently by my team. Jessica's voice was tight. Marcus, can you explain these discrepancies? He stammered. These must be mistakes. I'll have accounting fix. They're not mistakes, I said softly. We verified every entry. Twice. Silence. The kind that hums in your bones. Claire looked like she wanted to disappear. Marcus looked like he wanted to fight. You think this is revenge? He spat suddenly. You show up here after all these years, digging for dirt, trying to— Marcus, I interrupted. If I wanted revenge, I wouldn't be this professional. The CFO spoke next, voice cold. Mr. Hale, I'll be consulting legal immediately. Ethan, please send me the final report today. Of course, I said, closing my laptop. My work here is done. 8. The fallout. 2 weeks later, Arcadia's board terminated both Marcus and Claire for cause. The SEC was quietly looped in by the investors. I didn't celebrate, didn't post about it, didn't even tell my team the backstory. Justice, when it finally arrives, doesn't need applause. It just needs silence. Claire emailed me once, a short message, just a few lines. You didn't have to destroy us. I'm sorry for what happened years ago. I hope you can forgive me. I stared at it for a long time before replying. I didn't destroy you, Claire. I just told the truth. I forgave you a long time ago. Then I archived the thread. 9. The closure. A month later, I was back in my office, finalizing another client contract, when Priya walked in. You good? She asked. You've been quiet since Arcadia. I nodded. Just thinking. About them. I smiled faintly. About how karma doesn't always need an invitation. Sometimes it just waits for you to be ready. She grinned. You're poetic for an auditor. Occupational hazard. That night, I went home, poured myself a glass of bourbon, and sat on the balcony overlooking the city. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a victim of Marcus and Claire. I felt like a survivor who'd written his own ending. No fireworks. No revenge fantasy. Just quiet vindication. In the end, the best revenge wasn't ruining their lives. It was rebuilding mine. Better. Stronger. Untouchable. Part 3. Aftermath and Reflection. What nobody tells you about closure is that it's not a single door slamming shut. It's a hallway with a dozen doors you forgot existed, and they click closed one by one until the silence sounds like peace. After Arcadia, life didn't suddenly turn golden. My plants still died because I overwatered them. My neighbor still used the hallway as his personal podcast studio, and my coffee machine still refused to understand that strong did not mean liquid asphalt. But something inside me had shifted. The air felt clearer. The horizon felt closer. I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore. One echoes. For a while I waited, in the way you wait for weather, for news to break publicly. That's what stories like mine usually want. Headlines, public reckonings, comment sections piling on with schadenfreude. But Arcadia's board handled it like adults. They didn't trumpet the firings. They posted a neutral update on leadership transitions and moved on. The SEC inquiry kept its lid on. Investors have a way of keeping their laundry folded while it's being washed. I'd be lying if I said part of me didn't want spectacle. The younger, angrier version of me wanted a parade down Main Street with banners that read, "I was right." The man I'd become just wanted to sleep through the night and wake up not thinking about them. I got that most days. On the mornings I didn't, I laced my running shoes and let the city unwind beneath my feet. I learned the slow cartography of healing. How the lake looks when the sun is just a rumor. How the L train can sound like a heartbeat if you time your breath. How forgiveness is not a declaration but a practice, quiet and unglamorous. A week after the firings, Jessica Liu, Arcadia's HR director, asked for a follow-up call. We met in a small cafe that smelled like cinnamon and printer ink. "Thank you," she said, as soon as we sat. Not the tight professional thanks that lives in email signatures. A real one, soft around the edges. "We brought in a forensic firm to review your findings. They corroborated everything. We're cleaning house." I nodded. "I'm sorry it landed on your desk." "It's my desk," she said. "Sometimes that means catching falling knives." We talked shop for a while. HR triage, interview protocols, how to rebuild a team after leadership rots. She listened when I spoke and didn't flinch from the hard parts. When we finished, she stood, slid her card across the table, and said, "If you ever want to run training for our managers, on ethics, on controls, we'll hire you." Full stop. I turned the card in my hand. Jessica had the kind of steady presence that makes you want to do your best work. "I'll think about it," I said. "You should," she replied. "You're good at telling the truth without setting the room on fire." I tucked the card into my wallet. Some doors closed gently and opened better ones. 2. Gravity and flight. Priya brought in donuts the following Monday and left a box on my desk like a peace offering to the gods of emotional labor. "You're not allowed to eat your feelings, but you are allowed to eat maple bars," she announced. "Company policy." "I thought our policy was no sugar in Q3, I said, opening the lid. "That was before we single-handedly stopped a low-rent crime syndicate disguised as a C-suite," she said. "Eat the donut." Lewis slid into the doorway, balancing a laptop, a mug, and a cactus he insisted was a morale plant. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, and it felt true when I said it. "I'm okay." We spent the morning reviewing a new engagement, cleaning up a supply chain mess for a manufacturer who still thought spreadsheets were a personality type. Around noon, I wandered into my own kitchen, poured more coffee, and stared out the window at a sky that had decided to be bluer than necessary. My phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I answered, because sometimes the universe is subtle, and sometimes it rings at lunchtime. "Ethan," a woman's voice asked. Careful. Polite. "Yes." "This is Rebecca Hale." She let the last name hang there like an apology on a clothesline. "Marcus's sister." I leaned against the counter. The room widened. "How can I help you, Miss Hale?" She took a breath that sounded like paper. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Not for him. That's his job. For me. For not seeing it sooner. The shell companies, one was in my name. He told me it was for taxes. Said everyone does it. I signed what he put in front of me. I pulled a stool out and sat down. "Are you in trouble?" "No," she said. The forensic firm explained it. I wasn't involved. But I was adjacent, and that's its own kind of shame. I let the silence stretch until it was comfortable. What do you need from me? Nothing, she said quickly. I have a lawyer. It's all handled. A pause. I just wanted to tell you that I know you didn't do this to hurt him. You did it because it was right. Thank you, I said, and felt something uncoil in my chest. I hope you're okay. I will be, she said. Someday. We hung up. I stared at the muted reflection of myself in the microwave door and thought about how damage radiates outward, how the blast radius never respects cubicle walls. Then I went back to work. Because work, when it's honest, is a kind of prayer. 3. A letter I never sent. A week later, I wrote a letter I never mailed. Maybe you've done that. Taken all the words that rattle in your skull at 3 a.m. and laid them down where they can't do any harm. I addressed it to Claire and started with her old name, the one I met, the one before Hale. Claire, I don't know who we were when we let ourselves become those people. I don't know who taught us that ambition was a knife we had to hold by the blade. I only know that we both bled, and I learned to wrap my hands instead of reaching again. I hope you learn to open yours, not to take, but to hold, something softer than the next rung. This isn't an apology, and it isn't a victory speech. It's a weather report. The storm has passed. Take an umbrella anyway. I folded it. I put it in a drawer. Some words are only meant to be written. 4. The quiet audits. The next few months were unglamorous in the best ways. We trained a regional bank on fraud flags and watched their loss rate tick down like rain easing to a drizzle. We built a dashboard that translated a client's chaos into a language the board could read without closing their eyes. We told a startup founder that his pet project was quietly starving the revenue engine and watched him save his company by letting go of the thing he loved most. Not every story needs a villain. Sometimes the antagonist is entropy. I found I liked the work more when it wasn't drenched in drama. The thrill of the chase is addictive. So is the relief of maintenance. You tighten bolts. You oil hinges. You sweep the floor and call it victory. On a Wednesday in October, a man in a navy blazer stopped me outside a client's office. You're Ethan, he said. The auditor. I'm an auditor, I said. He laughed. Fair enough. My cousin was at Arcadia. Middle management. Said you saved her pension. Said the whole place feels like honest air for the first time in 5 years. I didn't know what to do with that. So I said, tell your cousin she saved her own pension by showing up and telling the truth. He stuck out a hand. I'm Ken. We shook. He walked away. The city went on being itself. I stood a little taller. 5. The dinner and the door. You know how some nights arrive already important? Like they've been circled in red on a calendar you can't see? Jessica invited me to speak at a small dinner for mid-level managers who were about to become senior ones. We want them to hear a different story, she said. Not the climb. The consequences. I accepted. I wore a navy suit that fit like a good decision. The room was floor-to-ceiling glass and warm wood, the skyline reflecting back like a second audience. I talked for 20 minutes about controls and culture and how ethics is a practice, not a poster on a wall. I told them my favorite boring truths. If you design a process that only works when everyone is honest, you've designed a failure. If the numbers make you look brilliant, but the story behind them makes your stomach hurt, choose your stomach. If you think no one will see, assume I will. Assume you will, at 2 in the morning, when your conscience refuses to let you sleep. They laughed where I hoped they would, and no one checked their phones. After, they asked questions that were really confessions. What do I do if the person who signs my paycheck wants me to fudge the numbers? What happens when the culture says family, but means overtime? How do you say no when yes is the easier story? I told them what I've learned, the hard way. If you can't say it out loud to your kid, your mentor, or a future version of yourself, don't do it. You can survive losing a job. You can't survive losing your name. When it ended, Jessica stood watching the last guests trickle into elevators, her hands in her pockets. You sure you don't want to build this with us? Internal benefits, 401k, all the warm blankets of corporate life. I looked at the room, at the city trying on its night lights, at the table where half-empty water glasses still held the shape of conversation. I like being the guy they call from outside, I said. She smiled. The storm door. Exactly. We walked toward the lobby. That's when the elevator opened and Claire stepped out. For a second I thought I'd misseen her. There are only so many faces we're wired to keep track of forever, and hers is one of mine. She hesitated, saw me, and squared her shoulders like she'd practiced in the mirror. Ethan, she said. Not a question. Claire. Jessica looked between us, read the air with professional precision, and said, I'll meet you outside, and faded into the polite distance people learn in self-defense. How are you? Claire asked. It's a ridiculous question for people with our history, but it's also the only one you can start with. I'm okay, I said. You? I'm learning. She glanced past me at the dark glass where the city was doubled. I'm at a nonprofit now. Development. It pays less and makes more sense. That sounds like measuring wealth with a different ruler. She almost smiled. Yeah. Silence. Not barbed wire this time. More like an old road with a speed limit sign you finally obey. I came tonight, she said, because I knew you'd be speaking. I waited. I wanted to hear you tell the story without me in it. And did you? Yes, she said. And no. That's fair. She took a breath. I'm sorry. I know. I don't expect. I forgave you, I said. A long time ago. She blinked. Why? Because carrying you around was heavier than letting you go. She pressed her lips together. I hope you're happy. I am, I said, surprised to hear that and realize it was true in the simple, undramatic way contentment is true. I hope you are too. She nodded, then laughed, one short exhale that sounded like an apology to herself. I'm trying to be the person who would have chosen differently. Back then. That's a good person to aim for, I said. We stood there a moment longer. Two people who once wanted forever and instead taught each other how to survive. Then she said goodbye and walked into an elevator that opened like a curtain call. The doors slid shut with the softest thud I've ever heard. When I rejoined Jessica on the sidewalk, she offered a look that was more question than words. Fine, I said. Good, even. Good, she said. The air was crisp. Fall had arrived for real. The city smelled like pretzels and cold air and new plans. 6. Lessons I keep. People ask me sometimes what I learned from all of it. As if the universe keeps a ledger and you get to circle the moral with a red pen. I don't think it works like that. But if I had to pin a few truths to the corkboard over my desk, they'd look like this. You can be thorough without being cruel. Precision is not vengeance. It's respect for the facts, for yourself, even for the person who broke you. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you learn to close softly, every day, until you forget they used to slam. Reputation is a shadow that shows up before you do. Walk in a way you won't mind seeing enlarged on a wall. Forgiveness is not audience participation. You don't need a confession to lay your burden down. Success is not proof you were right. It's the chance to be kind now that you can afford it. I wrote those on a sticky note and lost it under a stack of invoices. But I remember them better than anything I've ever filed. 7. The job I didn't take. In December, a private equity firm called. Big money, bigger reputation. They wanted an in-house head of compliance. Corner office. 7 figures. The recruiter said the number like a magic trick. I thought about saying yes. About the soft leather chairs. About never again wondering if Q1 would be feast or famine. I even pictured the business card, weirdly. It's amazing the things we think will make us safe. Then I thought about my team. About the way Priya rolled her chair over with a new pattern like she'd discovered Atlantis. About Lewis naming another cactus and insisting it was a team lead. About clients who called because they were scared and left less scared. I told the recruiter no. He sounded offended on behalf of my bank account. May I ask why? Because I like ringing the bell from outside, I said. It makes a clearer sound. He said that was poetic. He didn't mean it as a compliment. I poured myself another coffee and felt so wildly, specifically grateful for a life that made sense to me even when it didn't to anyone else. 8. The call you answer. On a Tuesday sleepy with snow, my phone lit up with a number labeled unknown. I answered anyway. You know me by now. Mr. Ward, a man asked. Yes. This is Daniel Ortiz, CFO. Arcadia, I said. Yes. A pause. We're different. Better. It's hard to measure. The books are clean. That's measurable. But it's something else too. The way people talk in meetings. The way they write emails. He cleared his throat. We want you to come back. Not to audit. To teach. I don't do retribution tours, I said. He laughed. We're not asking for that. We're asking for guardrails. We have new leadership. We're rebuilding. I'd like you to set the tone. I looked out the window. Snow falling without hurry. The world, quieter, in a way that makes you whisper back. Okay, I said. I'll come. 9. The return, again. Walking into Arcadia the second time wasn't a victory lap. It was a hand extended. New COO. New head of strategy. Claire was gone, obviously. There were faces I'd never seen and faces I recognized that looked lighter, like they'd taken off a backpack they didn't know they were carrying. I ran a workshop I called Boring Tools for Interesting Problems. We talked about conflict of interest matrices and whistleblower channels, and why the most radical thing you can do in business is write a plain English policy and follow it when it's inconvenient. Someone asked, "What do you do when the culture says one thing and incentives say another?" "You fix the incentives," I said. Culture is a song. Incentives are the metronome. One of them determines the beat. They laughed. They asked more questions. They stayed after to say thank you or tell me what they were worried about, or just to breathe near the idea that they could be honest and still get promoted. After, Daniel shook my hand. "We'll bring you in twice a year," he said. Standing engagement. I said yes. It felt like closing a door and installing a window. 10. A life that fits. I bought a second-hand piano and taught my left hand to forgive my right for being better. I took weekend trips to cities I'd only ever flown over. I learned to cook one dish perfectly and several others passably. I joined a Saturday basketball game in a park where nobody knew my last name. I met someone eventually, not because I was looking, because I made space I hadn't realized I'd filled with ghosts. Her name is Maya. She teaches 7th grade science and laughs at my spreadsheets like they're monologues. The first time she stayed over, she stood by the balcony and watched the city breathe. "What do you do again?" she asked. "I teach adults not to lie to themselves with numbers." That's somehow both hilarious and noble. It's mostly glorified housekeeping. She kissed me like housekeeping deserved a medal. I told her my story in pieces. Not to audition for sympathy. To put the furniture of my past where she wouldn't trip on it. She listened the way good teachers do. Like every detail might become a quiz later, but only the kind that helps you learn. When I finished, she said, "Thank you for not making me the reason you healed." I blinked. "What?" She smiled. "You did that before I got here. I don't want that job. I want this one." She gestured at the couch where our knees were a Venn diagram. Now, we ate takeout on the floor. We laughed when the soy sauce betrayed us with a tidal wave. I felt light all the way down to the bones that had learned to clench and finally forgot how. 11. The letter I did send. On a gray Sunday with nothing urgent and everything important, I wrote a different letter. I addressed it to my old self, the one who boxed his belongings with shaking hands while an HR rep pretended the staplers mattered. "Hey, you didn't deserve it. You also weren't destroyed by it. You are not the last bad day someone else gave you. You are the first good day you give yourself. Keep the receipts. Keep your name. Keep going. Me later." I printed it. I taped it inside the closet where my suits hang. It's amazing how many battles we win just by getting dressed. 12. The final audit. People think justice is a gavel. Sometimes it's a checklist. Years after the first day I walked into Arcadia, I completed another full-scope review, by request, not suspicion. It was the cleanest audit I've run. Not perfect, because we're not, but aligned. That's all you can ask of numbers and people, that they tell the same story. When I sent the final report, Daniel replied, "Thank you. Keep the billable hours high to fund your piano habit." I laughed. I closed my laptop. I looked around the office at the life I'd built like a slow cathedral. A notification pinged. A message from Priya. "Team lunch? Thai or tacos?" "This is a compliance vote. Majority rules." I typed back, "Tacos. Democracy is beautiful." Lewis responded with a cactus emoji I didn't know existed. I stood, slid on my coat, and caught my reflection in the dark window. Same face, different weather. For a long time, I believed the best revenge would be seeing them fall. Turns out, the best revenge is a life that fits. Not because it proves anything to anyone, but because it doesn't have to. I locked the door. I stepped into the hallway. The lights hummed like a well-behaved secret. Outside, the city tested its evening voice. Somewhere, a train stitched neighborhoods together with steel. Somewhere else, people made promises and kept them. I walked toward the noise that sounded like home. There's something poetic about the way life insists on testing your peace the moment you think you've earned it. It was 3 years after Arcadia when the universe dialed my number again. I was between projects, half-heartedly reorganizing my files, when an email landed in my inbox. The subject line read, "Consultation request, Helios Strategies." For a moment, I thought it was spam. The name hit like a chord I hadn't played in years. Too familiar, too sharp. Helios Strategies. The company that started everything. The one Marcus and Claire had burned to the ground when they lit their affair. I stared at the screen. The logo was different now, modern, minimalist. The message was from someone named Allison Trent, who identified herself as the new COO. "We're undergoing a strategic reorganization," she wrote. "Our board recommended an independent audit to ensure clean governance before we finalize new leadership hires. Your reputation precedes you. Would you be open to discussing terms?" I sat back, letting the irony settle like dust on sunlight. Helios, the phoenix pretending it had never burned. 1. Return to the scene. 2 weeks later, I walked through the same glass doors I'd exited years ago with a cardboard box and a broken engagement. The lobby had changed. New furniture, new paint, new faces. But beneath it all, the bones were the same. The same hum of ambition. The same scent of fresh coffee and nervous productivity. Allison greeted me warmly. She was sharp, kind-eyed, and radiated the kind of calm you only get from surviving a few storms. "Thank you for meeting, Ethan," she said, shaking my hand. "You come highly recommended. We're trying to scrub this place clean, legacy issues, old habits. The works." "Helios has history," I said carefully. She sighed. "That's one word for it. Let's just say the last leadership team left a few messes we're still discovering. You probably know more about that than most." I raised an eyebrow. "How so?" She smiled. "I do my homework. You used to work here, right?" "Years ago." "Briefly," I said. "Different era." "Then you understand why I need someone who won't flinch if he finds skeletons." "I don't flinch," I said. "I document." She grinned. "Perfect." 2. Ghosts in the machine. Helios had grown, but not evolved. The company had expanded into digital analytics, cloud campaigns, and investor-backed projects. But the infrastructure, financial, ethical, procedural, was still the same tangled web Marcus had spun. My first week was déjà vu wrapped in spreadsheets. Some employees I recognized from years past, older now, warier, friendlier when they realized I wasn't here to fire them. One afternoon, a quiet man from accounting stopped by my office. "You're Ethan Ward, right?" "Yes." He hesitated, glancing toward the door. "I remember you. You were the one who, well, back then, it wasn't right, what they did to you." "Marcus and Claire. Whole office knew. HR just," he stopped himself. "Anyway, glad you landed on your feet." I nodded. "We all do, eventually." He smiled sadly. "Not all of us." That night, I stayed late. The lights hummed overhead as I sifted through years of digital dust, transaction records, board minutes, policy updates that had never been followed. And there it was, a shadow from the past, coded neatly in a ledger entry. A payment trail dated 6 years ago. Marcus Hale Consulting. It was a ghost account, inactive but not erased. Payments had continued for 2 years after he'd resigned. I checked the signatures. Authorization from the old CFO. Approved by then CEO Paul Denton, the same man who'd backed Marcus during my firing. Marcus had been collecting consulting fees for 2 years after walking out with Claire. Over $250,000 in total. Unreported. Hidden in deferred expenses. The irony was exquisite. 3. Cleaning house. I met with Allison the next morning. "You found something," she said, reading my expression like an open folder. I slid a file across her desk. Legacy payments to a former executive. Masked as consulting fees. Approved internally. Never audited. She skimmed the pages. "Jesus, this goes back years. Before your tenure," I said. "But still within statute if the board wants to recover funds." She looked up. "Do you think we can?" "Easily. It's airtight. The documentation's immaculate." Ironically, Marcus was good at paperwork. She laughed once, sharp and humorless. "What kind of man steals twice?" "The kind who thinks the first time worked." She leaned back, thoughtful. "We'll move forward legally. But Ethan, you're not personally affected by this, are you?" I smiled faintly. "Not anymore. I just finish what others start." 4. The trial of paper. The case moved fast. Allison's legal team filed a civil recovery suit against Marcus Hale within the quarter. Turns out he'd tried to reinvent himself as a consultant again, a freelance strategist for small firms, running a hollow website full of buzzwords and empty testimonials. He settled quietly once the evidence surfaced. Paid every cent back. No public spectacle. No grand confession. Just a wire transfer and an ending. I didn't attend the hearing. Didn't need to. Justice doesn't always happen in courtrooms. Sometimes it happens in accounting ledgers. A month later, Allison called me into her office again. Board's thrilled, she said. They want to extend your contract. Build a full compliance framework. Audit everything. Rebuild our spine. That's what I do, I said. She smiled. And you do it without theatrics. That's rare. 5. The unexpected visitor. One Thursday afternoon, as I was packing up, the receptionist buzzed my line. Ethan, there's someone here asking for you. She doesn't have an appointment. Who is it? She says her name's Claire. My breath caught. Not out of fear, just recognition, like hearing a song you forgot was on your playlist. Send her up, I said. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was shorter, streaked with silver. She looked settled, somehow, like she'd stopped performing exhaustion. Hi, she said softly. I wasn't sure you'd see me. I wasn't sure either, I admitted. But here you are. She glanced around. You're back at Helios. Consulting, I said. Cleaning up old ghosts. Her smile flickered. I heard. About Marcus. About the audit. I didn't plan it. I know, she said quickly. I didn't come to accuse you. I came to thank you. That disarmed me. For what? For doing it right. For not destroying people the way he did. You could have gone scorched earth years ago. But you didn't. I shrugged. Scorched earth leaves no ground to stand on. She nodded, eyes shining but steady. I'm sorry. For what I did. For not stopping him. For letting fear feel like safety. I know, I said. And I forgave you already. She smiled through it. You always were better than me. No, I said. Just slower to burn. We stood there in the silence that used to be our battlefield. And then she said the thing that finally ended it. I hope you find someone who sees you without the smoke. I did, I said. And I hope you already have. She nodded. Good. We both deserve that, even if we took the scenic route. Then she left. No tears, no backward glance. Just grace, the quiet kind that doesn't need an audience. The circle closes. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I walked through the old office one last time. The place was unrecognizable. New desks, new art, new energy. But beneath it all, I could still see echoes of who we were. Claire laughing at a joke that wasn't funny, Marcus holding court by the coffee machine, me pretending the world made sense. I touched the glass wall of the conference room where I'd once been fired. The surface was cool and different, and that was the point. The past had no power left. I wasn't the man boxed up by HR anymore. I was the one writing the audit report that would rebuild the company that had broken me. Full circle. The report. The final audit was 186 pages. Thorough, transparent, clean. I signed it on a Friday afternoon, dated it, and handed it to Allison. You just saved us a decade of future problems, she said. Just doing my job, I replied. She smiled. You ever think about running a firm of your own? Training the next generation? I thought about it. About the nights spent cleaning up messes other people made, the satisfaction of watching a system breathe again. Maybe someday, I said, when I'm sure I've learned enough not to repeat the lessons. The call home. That night, I called Maya. She was grading papers at her kitchen table, hair pulled up, glasses sliding down her nose. How'd the audit go? She asked. Close the loop, I said. The company that fired me hired me to fix them. She smiled. You really are the patron saint of poetic justice. Just good record keeping. She set her pen down. You realize what that means, right? You're done chasing ghosts. I exhaled. Yeah, I think I finally am. The ledger balances. Months later, I received a letter from Helios. Inside was a framed plaque. A simple thing, nothing ostentatious. It read, in recognition of integrity, diligence, and the courage to tell the truth, even when no one was listening. Underneath, in smaller print, presented to Ethan Ward. Helios Strategies, Reformed 2025. I hung it on my office wall, not as a trophy, as a reminder that the truth doesn't need to shout to be heard, that integrity isn't a moment, but a method, and that sometimes the universe doesn't give you revenge, it gives you a report to write. The final paragraph. I don't post often on Reddit, but when I do, it's to remind someone like me, the guy or girl sitting in their car after being blindsided by betrayal, that this isn't the end. That someday, if you keep your name clean and your heart steady, the world circles back. And when it does, you won't need to scream. You'll just sign the paperwork, hand in your report, and walk out into the evening knowing the ledger finally balances. Because closure isn't revenge. It's accuracy. And I've always been very good with numbers.